to the Daulton Varsho trade. Before we get into the Daulton Varsho trade, Arm and I were talking about this when we were thinking about what to talk about for this episode. And we're both kind of annoyed with Brian Reynolds right now. I think maybe even me more than Aram. And it has nothing to do with Brian Reynolds, the person. I'm sure he's just hanging out with his family on Thanksgiving, Christmas, and just practicing and doing his best. But then the entire baseball world is talking about the package. The Pirates think that they have Juan Soto and Babe Ruth combined. Yes. Pirates Twitter thinks he's the best thing since Aaron Judge, and then the rest of the market views him as a very solid outfielder, and there is a complete difference in what both sides think that this guy is worth, and now nothing is happening. I wrote it in my 25 predictions where I was like, this is the lamest prediction, but he ain't getting traded. Even he could want a trade. I don't even think it matters. Yeah, it doesn't even matter at this point because the Pirates think they have Hank Aaron, and the rest of the league thinks that they have Brian Reynolds. And there's a difference in opinion here. But one guy who definitely garnered a big price, and you and Jack kind of walked me off the ledge here, because my first initial reaction, because again, I have been mocking Daulton Varsho everywhere. And what was funny was I got a lot of comments, a lot of DMs being like, do you really like this Daulton Varsho guy this much? You think the Yankees should pay this? You think this team should pay this? What are you talking about? This guy hit 240 last year. He's 26. What do you like about him? Well, I'll tell you what I like about him. First off, he barrels the shit out of the baseball. He's still young. He's about as good defensively as anybody in baseball. Not to say he's one of the best defensive outfielders. Well, he is. He was in the 99th percentile in outs above average. But the motherfucker can catch. Yeah, this dude can catch. What? Like, he is an incredible Swiss Army knife, like one we really haven't seen. I mean, obviously he's no Shohei Ohtani where he can pitch and hit, but this guy can play almost every position in the outfield, and then you can move him into catcher, and he's a good catcher, not just some block behind there. He is a good defensive catcher. And then on the flip side, dude hit 27 home runs, stole 16 bags, and he's still super young. Like, this was really his first real season. He played 37 games as a rookie in a shortened year where he didn't really perform that well, but he was a rookie. He played 37 games. Give him a break. Then last year, as in 2020, only played 95 games. He was a little bit banged up, but he had a 755 OPS while playing a bunch of different positions. Then this year, 27 home runs. He doesn't walk all that much, but the slug is there. He is well above average base runner. He's really, really fast. Like, his pop time to second base as a catcher is in the 60th percentile. This is a extremely well-rounded player with 4 years of control. And I knew that going in, but Aram, you and Jack talked me off the ledge, because when I found out that they got Gabriel Moreno and Lourdes Gurriel Jr., I said, even for me, who loved him much more than I thought everybody else did, that was way beyond what I thought, because I imagined it, because I've been mocking with the Yankees so much. I kind of imagined it as they traded Anthony Volpe and Gleyber Torres. That was kind of the comparison. Yeah. Now, is Gurriel versus Gleyber kind of similar? Then the reason I thought about it was Volpe. The Yankees are trading from a strength as they have shortstop prospects. Blue Jays are trading from the strength as they have catchers. But I really want to hear your perspective, because obviously I know it from text chain, but to really talk it out, because my initial reaction was, holy shit, that was a haul.
No, and your initial reaction was correct. And I think that's the interesting thing about it, because I catch myself in this pretty often, and I have to take a step back and think about it, because the trade in a vacuum, I think the Diamondbacks technically come out with more value, right? You get Gabriel Moreno, who's been one of my favorite prospects for a long time. I've been on that guy since he was in the back end of the Blue Jays prospect rankings, right? This guy is one of the best hitters.
He's in the crib.
He is just incredible. So, that's a guy that I really think you rarely see a prospect of his caliber moved, but you also rarely see, especially in today's game, a team with as much catching surplus as the Toronto Blue Jays. Alejandro Kirk's one of the best catchers in the game. Then you have Danny Jansen, who is better than, I would say, the majority of the big league starting catchers across the league as well.
He's like a
And then
top
you have
20
Moreno.
catcher. He's a top
Yeah.
20 catcher probably.
Yeah, and he's the backup. And then you have our, at Just Baseball, number 6 overall prospect, who is a catcher. So when I was thinking about it from this perspective, right, like Moreno, they've been trying to trade from that catching surplus for a minute here. They've or at least been thinking about it. Sometimes you're just not going to be able to get 100 cents on the dollar, right? Like maybe they got 88 cents on the dollar here, but they were able to get we know how bad the Blue Jays needed a left-handed hitting outfielder and how long they wanted that. And Kevin Kiermaier, when they signed him, we're like, okay, that's a good fit, but that's not what they wanted, right? That's not the left-handed hitter that they needed in their lineup. Daulton Varsho is. And Daulton Varsho now playing in a corner with Kiermaier in center and having the ability to play in center if Kiermaier's hurt or struggling or whatever, that makes that outfield elite defensively. And Springer in another corner, and also gives you the ability to keep Springer off, get some days off. But what I will say, in the trade in a vacuum is, I think the Blue Jays realized, hey, I don't know if we're going to get a more valuable piece for one of our catchers, specifically Moreno, than a Daulton Varsho. Are we going to get 100 cents on the dollar? Probably not. But if we want to put our best foot forward here in 2023 and try to have the best team we can, instead of having some third catcher stashed in AAA for no reason, this might be our best opportunity. Because if you don't trade for Varsho, who else are you trading for? Maybe Brian Reynolds, but apparently the Pirates value him on a different level. Maybe Moreno's not enough for Daulton or for Brian Reynolds.
Which is crazy because Varsho even has more years of control than Reynolds does, and he's a far superior defender. He's younger.
Who would you rather
Reynolds
have?
Is the better hitter.
Who would you rather have, Varsho or Reynolds? I would say with the control and the versatility and the defense, probably Varsho. Right?
I'm a Varsho guy. I think Colby and I remember we were talking about him when Not Gambling Advice first got started, and it was a lot about fantasy baseball as well as gambling. Colby and I were doing these episodes in the preseason, and this was the guy who we were like, get him in fantasy because he's going to be insane. He's going to qualify at catcher. He's going to qualify in the outfield. He can hit 20 home runs. He can steal 15 bags, and he outdid even our high projections of the guy. Yeah. So, and, I watching plenty of Diamondbacks games because, I always got an under somewhere. And I watched this guy and I think he's like everything that you want from Ben Zobrist with power, and he can catch. Yeah. I was like, this guy is so freaking valuable for a team. So while Blue Jays fans are thinking to themselves, okay, we got him. We traded the entire, we traded our best prospect, and not just our best prospect, one of the best prospects in the game. Yeah. And Gurriel Jr. He better be good. I'm telling you, Blue Jays fans, you got a really good one. You can look at the 106 WRC plus that he had last year and think to yourself, well, he's just a slightly above average hitter. This guy is only going to get better. That was his first real season. And it's like WRC plus is a great stat. And it might be the best stat that we have for a hitter, but it's not everything. We talk about this all the time. Stats aren't everything. You have to look at other things like with Dansby. Everyone's like, well, he's a 115 OPS plus guy. Yeah, but how many shortstops hit 30 bombs? Yeah, I'm just saying. I'm not comparing all of them, but some things just you got to look at the whole picture.
Great defense, right? And this will put it in perspective, Peter, because I as you were talking about that, it spurred a thought in my head, and I was like, I wonder where he'd stack up on the Blue Jays in F4 last season. Daulton Varsho, that is. Guess what?
Number 1.
4.6 F4 last year would edge out Bo Bichette's 4.5 for number 1 on that team. Granted, if George Springer played the whole season, but that's a big if, he's been banged up a lot too, he would have led the team in F4 because he played 133 games and had a 4.2. But we're talking about now a guy that you just added to your team for a guy that was barely playing for you last year, Moreno, not due to his fault.
And there's no area for him to play. Exactly. Is he going to, was Kirk? I mean, you could trade Kirk, but Kirk just proved himself.
Just proved it.
Moreno hasn't
proved. You're hoping that Moreno hits like Kirk next year.
Literally. You're hoping Moreno becomes Kirk.
Correct. So you have the Kirk. You have him in his present form. And the other thing is Gurriel. So I thought he had 2 years of control. Actually, based on the way his contract vested with his service time, I was reading something. Someone tipped me off on it. He actually only has 1 year of control. So that also changes it as well a little bit. But for 4 years of Daulton Varsho, yeah, and you're trading from someone that, you don't subtract from your big league team. And let's be real. The Blue Jays are looking at a World Series. That's what they want to do. I'm not saying they're going to win it, but that's what their goal is going into next year. And it's a fair goal for that team. So I love the move. I do think like where you're talking about from a vacuum, like when we first had the conversation, of course, like it's a pretty steep price to pay, but if they don't do it for Varsho, who are they getting? And if you hold on to Moreno going into next year, when are you going to make that move? And
Yeah.
what if he gets off to a slow start in triple? What if he gets hurt? What if there's so many variables that you might not have that opportunity. You have an opportunity to get an impact outfielder with 4 years of control, no brainer. And I'm really excited to see how he fits in out there. If they have him in a corner outfield, he might win the Gold Glove out there. And we know what he can do with the stick.
So just to wrap up on this trade, would you qualify it as a win-win? Because I think
Yes.
that's where I kind of landed on. Because
I would love to talk D-backs a little bit too, like just in terms of
let's talk
what do you think of
D-backs.
the D-backs now? We'll talk about win-win. So real quick to wrap up on the deal on the D-backs perspective. Like this team is starting to look, I'm not saying that they're there yet, but you can see where they're going, right? Like you can see the direction they're heading. No, our number one prospect in baseball, just my favorite guy in the world, Corbin Carroll, is going to be up there from day one. Looked great last year, right? Alec Thomas is a phenomenal piece. Jordan Lawler's waiting the wings not far away. Christian Walker had a season that I think he's going to duplicate. I really think he found it. Jake McCarthy looks like a really good piece for them. They've got the pitching now starting to come together. Zach Gallen looks like an ace. And now, Carson Kelly, he took a step back last year. I still think he's a great backup. And now you have that potential all-star catcher here, but at the very least, an above average regular catcher with 6 years of control. Like this core is starting to really come together, Peter. And they traded from a spot where, Varsho is really good. We were just singing his praises, but I think Corbin Carroll is going to be better. I think Alec Thomas is a diminished version of him, but you weren't going to get Moreno for Alec Thomas. And then they also have, other guys in the fold there as well that I think all could be really good contributors for them. I'm really excited about this D-backs team, man. They might be one of my favorite teams in baseball moving forward just because I think they're going to be a lot of fun.
I totally agree with you. And I got kind of made fun of. Because I called them sneaky elite. And maybe that's a little bit much. But you were saying, and I just want to fill in the gaps of what you were saying because I totally agree with you. And you touched on kind of your favorite players. I just want to round out the lineup because tell me it's not kind of sneaky elite. Corbin Carroll in the center field could become one of the best players in baseball. He's our number one prospect. Dude slugged 500 last year, and he's the fastest player in baseball. And he played what? He had 115 plate appearances. Ketel Marte, one of the best.
He's going to be better.
He's going to be better. And he's 29 years old, one of the best second basemen in the sport, who can also play outfield. He's just an incredible player when healthy. Jake McCarthy came on and hit really well, and he's 25 years old. He's the guy's a first rounder. He's playing right field. Christian Walker won the Gold Glove and hit a bunch of dongs, hit 36 home runs. Josh Rojas at third. Their little Swiss Army knife. Like the guy can play all over the infield, has one of the better gloves in that division, and is just a very solid all-around player. He's 28 years old. Lordy Scurriel. They just put him in left field. The guy hit 291 last year. Yeah. Like he just didn't show the power. He only slugged 400, only hit 5 home runs, and he's kind of a streaky guy. Like I remember we started taking his props in the second half because he's always been like a big second half guy. So I could just totally see him getting off to a slow start there with the Diamondbacks and then really coming on in the second half, just like he does every year. Then you have Gabriel Moreno, who is one of the best catching prospects. Now that Adley has graduated, Gabriel Moreno is the best catching prospect, maybe Francisco Alvarez, but the same group. Then you have Pavin Smith, who rakes. Like he didn't have a good year last year, but he was 7th overall.
Yeah, and then a first round pick.
And then you have Jordan Lawler coming up.
Yep.
This team is sneaky elite.
And guess who we kind of forget who they snagged who could be a bounce back candidate is Kyle Lewis. They've got Kyle Lewis there too. I'm not banking on it, but like it's another guy though that first round pedigree, won the rookie of the year in the shortened year, which I discount obviously to a degree, but this guy's capable with the stick. Like there's a chance he could be good. And then again, like you don't even need Gurriel in the outfield. That guy could be your DH if Pavin Smith doesn't work out because you've got Alec Thomas as well and McCarthy. So like they've got so many dudes that can play. We're talking about defensively. If you have an outfield of McCarthy, Carroll, and Alec Thomas, that is elite. That is an elite defense, even after subtracting one of the best defenders in the game in the outfield in a Daulton Varsho. And that left side of the infield is probably the biggest weakness right now. But I think it's going to get there, right? Josh Rojas, like you said, Swiss Army knife. Nick Ahmed can pick it at least, and we know who's waiting in the wings and who could be coming over. So I will say, too, the pitching, people might have the questions there. I think it's better than people give him credit for, because Zach Gallen, I think, is a bona fide ace in this game. Merrill Kelly, he's not the sexiest pitcher in the world, but the guy gets outs, and he's just a steady arm. And then Mad Bum, whatever. If that guy's your 5, it's fine. But Ryan Nelson, Dre Jameson looked good last year. And then Brandon Pfaadt is one of my favorite pitching prospects to come up next year and make an impact. So they've got it. And then Joe Mantiply in the bullpen, a few other pieces. Mark Melanson is a bounce back candidate. They've gone and made some quiet additions here and there. This team's not going to win the World Series next year. They're not going to make the playoffs next year, but they are a sneaky good team that I think could surprise everybody. And I was talking about it before too. I'm with you here. Like, this is my team that I said we had the Mariners 2 years ago. We had the Orioles last year. I think the Diamondbacks are going to be the team this year, though they might have been too loud now in the offseason that they may not be as underrated enough, because I think people are starting to realize this team's pretty freaking good.
It's kind of good. Sneaky elite. Maybe elite is not the right way. Maybe Danny Duffy isn't an emerging ace. Sometimes I get ahead of myself. But what I do think is I'm very excited for Arizona baseball. And I think Diamondbacks fans haven't seen the light in a while, in a long time. And this is the most excited about the D-backs I've ever been.
Oh, yeah.
Ever been.
I can't think of a time I was.
And it's only going to get better. Like you mentioned that really good outfield. They also got Lordy Scurriel Jr., who I still think is a good player.
Absolutely.
And like Gabriel Moreno could end up being better than Daulton Varsho. We don't know. Gabriel Moreno in 5 years versus Daulton Varsho in 5 years. Let's see what the F-WAR says.
I'll say this. All I'll say about Moreno as we wrap up this trade conversation is he's another guy that wouldn't surprise me if he's getting everyday reps, which I think he will. He's one of the best bat to ball guys I've seen in the minor leagues. One of the best hit tool guys, easy 70 grade hit tool for me that I've seen in the minor leagues. And the power has been the question. We've seen him hit balls 111, 112 miles an hour. He put a hole through a wall actually with a line drive last year. Like, the ball went through the wall and they had to call time. It was a ground rule double. Like, he hits the ball really hard. He just hasn't been able to consistently find it. He's going to be playing in Colorado. The ball flies in Arizona. And if he can just tap into 18, 20 home run power, which is in the tank there, this guy could be one of the better catchers in the game. And now all of a sudden this team looks like a force with control for a long time, right? Corbin Carroll, Alec Thomas, all these guys are not going anywhere for a long time. They even locked up Marte. Walker, I'm going to be interested to see what they do. I bet they lock him up too. I really like what they're building. And then they've got some alternate guys like Dominic Fletcher, even a Seth Beer, that if they could, maybe something clicks for them, that's another guy that you could either trade or, have as, in case somebody gets hurt, as depth at the DH outfield spot as well.
And you could trade Geraldo Perdomo for whatever.
Yes, correct.
Literally whatever.
That's been a top 100 guy for a lot of publications for a long time. I don't get that one. But yeah, I mean, he still has value too.
Still has value.